Hi, welcome to Eerie River Publishing. We are doing a live author kind of meet and greet, as well as we're reading a book, a story today from our book, It Calls from the Forest, Volume 1, called Automatic Contamination by M.A. Smith. Really excited to have you guys all here today. We're excited to have our authors. We've got Melanie, Holly, and Kimberly, as well as myself, just celebrating Women in Horror Month, because this is February, so this is our last live event. So thanks for tuning in this whole month. If you haven't been able to follow us so far, just go on to our YouTube page. We've got most of them on there already. And yeah, we're really excited to just celebrate women in horror. So thanks again for joining. Good morning from Australia. Hello, Neen. Hope you're having a good day. So Eerie River Publishing, that's us. We are an indie publisher publishing the darker genres, so horror, dark fantasy, dark fiction. And we're just, like, our biggest goal is to just uplift the indie author voices, because we know there's so many amazing indie authors out there, and we always sometimes get boggled down with only the mainstream big guys. So we're here to kind of make sure that we're all getting a voice. So our first person we're going to introduce is Melanie. She, M.A. Smith. She's the one that wrote Automatic Contamination, which got high praises from our anthology. So we're going to talk to her a little bit, introduce everyone, and then we're going to just start reading. So get ready. Melanie, are you ready? Okay. I see a little yes. Hi.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, how are you today?
Very good, thank you. Really pleased to be here this evening.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you here. I'm really excited because this story in particular, when I read it, it was one of the first stories that I read that I was like, I love this story. I need to have it.
Thank you.
Yeah, like, where did this idea come from?
There's actually quite a big grain of truth in the idea, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
About 20 years ago, I lived on a new estate, like in the book, and I've always been really fascinated in the sort of wastelands, around new estates, that sort of countryside that's become scrubby, once it's been built around. Me and my boyfriend at the time used to go for walks around this wasteland and the forest there, and we did come across one time a weird house out in the middle of the wood with no path into it, no road, that did have a paper in the mailbox, and it was totally grown up, totally overgrown, this whole house. Really, really weird atmosphere, but it was obviously not derelict. There were obviously people in there, and the whole atmosphere was so weird. We were really freaked out, and it stayed with me for 20 years, this idea of this sort of habited place in a wood, in sort of a wastelandy, scrublandy place, that I knew I was always going to write about it. And that's what
I'm glad you did.
Thank you.
Was it like a newspaper from that day?
I was too scared to look, but it wasn't rotted. This was what was really weird, is that it was in the mailbox, totally unrotted, and yet there was we'd sort of yomped through the undergrowth to sort of go past it. We didn't know it was there. So how anyone had even got there to be putting this paper in is a mystery. And for all I know, Michelle, that house is probably still there, maybe with a new newspaper in there, but I've always been too scared to ever go back and look for it.
Well, that's a really cool idea. So that's the part, well, we won't tell too much about it. What do you have coming up for 2021?
So I'm working on a few things at the moment, and I've got a few stories that are due out over the next few months. So I've got something in the Where Traveller have done a special Women Destroy retro sci-fi issue recently. So I've got a sci-fi horror in there, and I've got a few things I'm working on that's at various stages of production or not production. Some of it's just in the thinking stage. Yeah,
no worries. I have tons of things in the thinking stage because I can never actually get my hands down to actually type into things. So I feel you.
Yeah, it's still a process. I feel sort of that's still part of the process.
Yeah, it is. Like working out in your head is for sure.
Yeah, I'm brewing stuff.
Yeah, I tend not to write things down, and I don't know why. I tend to just make the plot in my head before I even touch the keyboard first. So
yeah, sometimes I feel it's too special to touch until you're sure, because I feel you could break it.
Yeah, like you can jinx yourself. Exactly. Like you can ruin it by putting it down. Yeah.
Exactly. It's too fragile. It needs to coalesce a bit more in your mind. Otherwise it can shatter. So I've got you.
I like the way you think. I like the way you're thinking. Because that's, I feel the same thing.
Really, it's probably the truth is I can't be bothered some days to write it down, but we'll go with the first thing I said.
It's true. No, I'm sure it's the other one. It's the reason. Okay, well, I am going to say goodbye to you for right now. We're going to bring you back up when we have everyone else, and we'll start reading, okay?
Okay.
Next up is going to be Holly. And I think you're ready, right? Yes, we're getting thumbs up. Hey, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. I was just noticing your t-shirt.
Yes, I grabbed myself some swag. Woo.
Look at that. That is beautiful.
Yeah, I wanted to get the one that has the clear on the inside, so it doesn't have the white. Because I know a couple other people have grabbed them. They've gotten the ones that are the white on the inside, but I wanted to see what it looked like this as well. So I'm excited. I picked it up off of, I grabbed mine off of the Etsy store.
Nice.
Yeah, and I also, my mug also arrived.
I saw you had the matching mug.
I'm like, I gotta put hot coffee in it. So yes, promo. The mugs are available. There's
totally not planned.
Inside one, or you can get all white. And they, so for the Etsy site, it lets you do a little bit different. So this one actually has like some wordage on the back as well, where it says, "Hell is empty and all the devils are here." My mother did not appreciate this mug when she like drank from it the other day. I was like, she's like, "Oh, the devils are here." I'm like, "Yes, Mom." Goodness.
Figuratively.
You're fine. Just drink from it. It's a mug. But yeah, so I picked up that. So I'm excited because I ordered them like 3 weeks ago and I finally got it. So yay for Canada.
Nice.
So yeah, thank you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm happy to be here. Happy to be a part of the Eerie River family. So I'm excited about Women in Horror Month. I've been reading all like Women in Horror all month long to celebrate. I've been like posting on Facebook and stuff, things that I've been reading. So I've been trying to kind of spread and promote women in horror because I think it's very important. So I wanted to also say thank you for hosting these events, for, having, being so supportive. It's nice that Eerie River is a female run publisher, so obviously I always want to be behind that kind of thing. So yeah, thanks for hosting. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I think it's important to be able to uplift all of our voices, not just during Women of Horror Month, but especially during this time, because it is a field that was at one point really overrun with just male voices. So it's nice to be able to showcase that, no, there are women in this genre as well, and they're just as awesome. So like, might as well, let's do it. So you're welcome. And thank you for participating. It's awesome to have you here. So what do you have coming up in 2021?
Well, soon, March the 15th, an anthology that I am a part of is AM Inc. So the title of the anthology is The Half That You See, Nightmares, Deliriums, and Illusions. I have a story called Raven O'Clock, which is going to be a part of that. And it was really exciting because it's actually one of the first stories that I ever had accepted, like horror stories. But it's one of the, it took a long time to get published because it was accepted early by the publisher. So I've been waiting for this one to come out because it was really nice.
When is this coming out?
Yeah, no, it's one that I've been sitting on. Like, I think I got the acceptance for it like late 2019. So I've been waiting for this one. So I'm excited about it. So that's March 15th. And again, that's AM Inc. is the publisher. It was edited by the lovely Rebecca Rowland. And then later, I think 2021, although you can correct me on this one, I do have a story coming out in Eerie River Publishings, It Calls from the Sea.
Yes.
And my story in that anthology is called Heaven's Lake, and it's about a boy and a weird lake, and it's kind of got all the elements of horror that I love, kind of that young coming of age, and then the weirdness, and it's a nice thing, and I'm very excited to be part of another Eerie River anthology.
Yeah, that one, I believe, we're hoping late May, mid to late May. It all depends on how fast edits can come out, and then I can just, because we've got the cover ready, so I'm just like, let's get this done.
So those are my two biggest things I'm most excited about. I'm a part of a couple other projects that I can't talk about for various reasons. So there will be more from me this year. Yes, exactly. So there will be more from me this year. I'm also kind of working on a novella, even though I swore that I was a short story girl at heart. I'm trying to branch my wings out and do that. So we'll see how that turns out.
Just think of it as like 3 short stories that tied together and put them together.
And that's kind of how I've been approaching it.
Yeah, approach it as like a chapter at a time, like three chapters kind of idea.
That's very good advice.
Well, good. Well, I'm excited to see what comes out and all your secret projects. Well,
sounds very ominous, right?
Yeah. Hopefully it won't be. Hopefully they'll just be fantastic.
Or maybe they will be because they're supposed to be scary, right?
It's true.
It's horror. Ominous is good.
Yeah, it's very true. So we will talk. I'm going to hang up with you for a second, and then we'll bring you back up after we talk to Kimberly, and then we'll all get through this, go through this awesome story.
Sounds good.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Okay. I accidentally full screened myself. Oop, there we go. I couldn't add anybody. Sorry. Kim, are you ready? Yep. That's Michelle. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I apparently need a mug upgrade, but for all that, I'm good.
Cheers. What's in your mug?
Chai.
Oh,
caffeine.
That's not, yeah, mine too. Well, mine's coffee.
Never been able to get into coffee.
Oh, I don't know. I love it. It's just like, give me more, but make it black and make it hot and strong. So.
Well, you don't sleep. You sleep like 2 hours a night.
So. No. I sleep 3.
Sorry. Then you can drink less coffee.
Yeah. So how are you doing today? It looks like sunny and beautiful where you are.
So yeah, it's gorgeous. Although I may have to go in if the planes keep going overhead because we don't want that getting in the way of the story.
Yeah.
But I'm good.
That's good. Tell us what's going on for 2021 for you. Do you have any big projects coming out? Are you working on something behind the scenes that we're allowed to know about?
Yes and no. I've got, I think, something like 11 or 12 collaborations throughout the rest of the year. Right, so not much. I'm trying to finally get a newsletter going. You don't want to know how much cursing has been involved with that.
I do know.
Almost threw my tablet across the room last night.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm hoping to finally get a novel done this year.
Well, that sounds like with 11 other projects on the go, that seems like a big, exciting adventure.
You know what? You might as well push it.
Yeah, you got to.
And I'm moving in less than 3 weeks, so that'll be fun too.
Goodness gracious. So it sounds like you're having a good year. It's going to be a great year.
It's going to be a great year.
I know.
Okay, so can you hear that? Is that too much?
I'm fine.
Okay.
I don't know when. It's good for me. But see if anyone else mentions it. We'll be okay. Okay. Well, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna bring everybody over. Oh yeah, make sure everyone's getting ready. There we go. Hey everybody. So we've got a couple of people. I just want to say hi to Neen, who said hello, and then we have Wordsmith, which is Deborah. Hi, Deborah.
Hi.
We've got Natalie from Florida as well. Chris Hewitt. Oh my gosh, look at all these people. Michelle, who lives in my province. Crazy. I was like, I finally have a local someone. Although we're still hours and hours away. So that's exciting. So hi, thank you for joining, everybody. We're really excited to read this. We hope you enjoy. We're going to be reading Automatic Contamination by the lovely M.A. Smith, who is going to be doing the narration. And then we all have some, yeah. So are we ready? Let's go. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, take it from the top.
Take it from the top.
There was something wrong with that place, and we knew it from the very beginning. The beginning was a dust-fuzzed summer's day when the last of the flocks of earth movers and high-vis clipboard carriers were wrapping up their work and wheeling away from the estate's perimeter. Everything within the boundaries of our test tube town still smelled of new carpet and paint and fresh tarmac. The books in the brand new library stood straight on unbent spines, and the graffiti that would one day cover the bricks of the village hall was no more than hissing dreams deep within the road cans of spray paint in the just-built hardware store. I was old enough then to be pretty cynical about all of that. I was 13 that summer, and the amputated woods and fields beyond the dual carriageway had begun to occupy my mind near constantly. The road itself cut to the estate's fringe like a defensive moat, and the low-level hum of the cars blurring along its length crept into my ears in my night-darkened room. I found myself falling into fitful dreams that I could not remember come morning, but that I knew had to do with that strange half-land outside the town. I still dream about those places, but now, God help me, I actually remember them. Back then, I knew that my parents wouldn't be happy with my running feral, as they referred to my participation in any activity that was not strategically planned and assessed for health and safety. Yet there was a point in the day where I could run free, right between the 2 hours or so between my shambling in from school and my mum and dad getting back from work. Later, this would become the time for illicit alcohol and stunted, bumpy kisses. But at 13, I still had one foot in childhood. All I wanted was to get out from under the shadow of all those crowded up houses and pelt through a forbidden wilderness. We'd been in our new house on the estate for maybe 3 or 4 months when I befriended Clem, who lived on my street, and Lucas, who lived a few streets down. We all went to the local school, as shiny, new and soulless as everything else, and were often together in those couple of parentless hours. Clem and Lucas too were left to their own devices after school. I don't even know where their folks were. I presumed they worked, but I never asked. The adult world was still a distant planet then, and one that we weren't concerned with or even interested in, to be honest. On the dry and faded afternoon that I'm telling you about, I just had time, crashing in from school, to change into jeans and a tee before the doorbell rang. I knew it was Lucas. Clem wasn't one for doorbells. Sure enough, as Lucas and I stood in my parents' spotless kitchen, discussing which route we were going to take, an almighty thudding reverberated around the house. Before I'd even taken 2 steps to the front door, I heard the snap of the letterbox being pushed up.
Open the door, dickhead.
I could see Clem's mouth smooshed up against the slot from the other side.
Come on, Jamie.
More hammering.
What the hell is wrong with you?
I said, pulling open the door so fast that Clem, on the other side, lost her balance and began to topple backwards off the step. I caught her by the forearm, pulling her upright. Clem grinned at me.
Fuck you very much.
She pushed past me into the hall.
Dickhead.
I nudged the door closed with my elbow and followed Clem back into the kitchen.
Really, Clem?
Lucas said. Clem merely patted the side of her backpack in reply.
Which way are we going?
She asked.
Jamie reckons we should cross the carriageway by the flats next to the pub.
No way.
Clem interrupted.
My mom's best mate lives in one of those flats. She'll get straight on the phone if she sees us.
Where do you suggest then, Clem?
I butt in. She looked at me, then Lucas, dead in the eye.
Underpass.
For the briefest of moments, no one spoke.
I don't know, Clem.
Lucas began. Clem's lips began to curve upwards at the corners.
Scared?
Don't be an idiot.
Lucas answered sharply.
What do you think, Jamie?
I thought about it, but I really didn't want to go near the underpass. It was an aborted part of the estate, a botched start back from when the whole place was not much more than a raw scar in the earth, and I was still happy in my old, shabby little life. The underpass was a short, concrete tunnel that ran below the dual carriageway on the western edge of the town and led nowhere. When you came out the other end, you were met with maybe a few metres of patchy tarmac and gravel, which then separated into rough grass and scrubby woodland. It was creepy even before the stories had started circulating at school about the child-eating tramp that lived there, tucked tight against the dark walls of the pass. They said he was ready to reach out a clawed hand to grab any young flesh that happened against its owner's every screaming instinct to wander through. Clem and Lucas were both looking at me, waiting.
Okay, let's do it,
I said.
That whole story about the tramp is crap, Lucas. Don't you think we'd have heard about it on the news or had police crawling all over the estate if there was really a psycho in the underpass eating kids? This isn't fucking it.
Lucas thought for a moment, then nodded.
Okay,
he said. I poured us all a glass of juice and we chugged our drinks back in unison.
I didn't actually believe it,
Lucas said as we headed out the door.
The place just gives me the creeps, that's all.
Clem laughed.
You did believe it.
Shut up,
he muttered. It took us about half an hour to get to the underpass. It was on the furthest outskirts of the estate, beyond the parchment dry park and the pathetic nature pond. The rise of a long landscaped hill obscured both it and the dual carriageway from view, but as we neared it, we could hear the low drone of the cars rise to an insectile whine.
Are you sure you're all right with this?
Clem asked, and I couldn't tell if she was addressing me or Lucas. The snideness had gone from her voice, and I began to suspect that maybe she'd like to be talked out of what we were about to do.
Of course,
I answered for both of us.
Like I said, it's just a shitty story.
We trundled up the small hill. Reaching the top, Clem plopped her backpack down on the ground and pulled out a bottle of orange liquid. She took a swig and passed it to me. I took a deep draught and immediately sprayed it back out.
Clem, is this spiked?
The grin reappeared.
Only a little bit. Can you handle it, Jamie?
What the hell is wrong with you?
I asked her for the second time in an hour. Yet I took another sip, more carefully this time. I drank again, then tried to pass the plastic bottle to Lucas.
I don't want any,
he said.
Yes, you do.
Clem insisted.
No, I really don't.
Clem grabbed the bottle from me and thrust it towards Lucas's face. He snatched the bottle from Clem.
Anything to make you shut up.
He took the tiniest sip.
Happy now?
We stood quietly for a moment looking at the view. Behind us, the estate undulated as far as the eye could see, uniform rows of clone houses dipping and rising in martially ordered blocks, the thin smoke from a couple of barbecues drifting above the roofs like a pair of long grey balloon strings. We barely gave it a glance. What we wanted was ahead of us. At the bottom of the hill, alongside the dual carriageway, ran a stunted narrow path, largely overgrown with tall grass. It led nowhere and terminated at the mouth of the underpass.
Come on, losers,
Clem said, and began striding down the slope towards the path and the rush of cars.
Honestly, it's fine,
I said quietly to my friend as we followed after.
Yeah, I know,
he sighed. Clem turned then, smiling back at us. It was a wide, beautiful smile that bloomed as bright and free as one of the meadow flowers that grew unnoticed by the side of the road. As quickly as the turn of the breeze, it was gone, and she was just ordinary old Clem again, shouting back at us to get a move on. There has not been a day that's gone by since that afternoon that I haven't thought of that smile. At the bottom of the slope, we walked in silence, single file for 100 yards or so, following the ratty little path. The cars passed by, separated from us only by a low barrier and a handful of inches. We moved to stand side by side as we came to the open moor of the underpass. Concrete steps descended down into the gloom, burrowing beneath road and earth. I realised that despite their proximity, the noise of the cars had become a distant thing. The one sodium light still working down there flickered just out of sight. I knew that it was just the chancy play of light that made it look as though someone was down there crawling along the floor.
Are you sure about this?
Lucas said to me, and when I looked at him, his blue eyes were wide, and the clouds above rolled reflected across his grey gaze. We were all quiet for a moment.
I don't want to go back yet, Lucas.
I ran a hand through my hair.
I feel like I'm suffocating in there. Do you understand that?
A few beats of silence pulsed between us, a thick heartbeat in the heavy air.
Fuck them,
Lucas said quietly.
Ever since we came here, my folks have been acting like the Kardashians, literally the second we arrived. Automatic contamination.
Fuck them.
Agreed Clem.
I wish we'd never moved to this shithole. No offense.
All right, then.
I said, taking the first step down.
Let's get out of here. For a couple of hours at least.
And together we put our backs to the droid houses and pretend parkland and crossed over to somewhere else. Like I said, we knew there was something wrong with that place from the very beginning. There was no bird noise for a start. When we came out the other side of that underpass, limbs whole and bodies unnibbled, that was the first thing that struck me. It wasn't that I'd been particularly listening to it before, the hard ratchet of the crows, the spiralling trill of the summer robins, but I became aware of it by its absence. At the top of that step, on the other side of the underpass, a few hundred yards and a few 100 million miles away from the clean slate sweep of the estate, there was no birdsong. The skies, the swollen bellies of the trees, were empty of noise. There was nothing but the diesel hum of the cars behind us and the noise of our breathing, wet and slow.
Which way, Jamie?
Clem asked. I looked around. We were in a ragged clearing. The patchy gravel of the path petered out maybe 20 yards ahead of us, just shy of the boundaries of a scrub forest. I could just make out the ghost of an old footpath, disappearing into the trees slightly to our left. Behind us, the underpass dipped beneath the road, and the bright green of the man-made slope beyond hid the town from sight.
There,
I said, pointing to the faint track that ran into the tangled copse.
You want another sip of party juice first?
Clem said, shifting her pack half off her shoulders.
I'm good.
Lucas?
Nah,
he said, and began pushing through the dust-dry long grass towards the trees. Clem cocked an eyebrow at me, but followed him. I came last. I don't know to this day whether it was my imagination or not, but when we passed into the shadows of the ivy-strangled dog oak and the stunted birch trees, the wasp-like whine from the road vanished. I don't mean it faded or became muffled as we travelled further away. It completely disappeared, as if the cars had ceased to exist. Maybe they had. Maybe, if we'd looked round, we would have seen a soup-like fog behind us where the road had been, where the underpass had been. Maybe we would have seen it creep up the green slope beyond and, surmounting the summit, slide down into the folds of the estate, blotting and erasing, feeding. But we didn't look round. We followed the dead little path into the secret half-light of the forest instead, and it was magnificent. Odd snarls of rusted, barbed wire sprouted in patches like fungus, in thickets and along the bases of trees. A cache of miniature bottles, medicinal-looking and truly ancient, were piled in a cairn on a moss-varnished stump. Clem stopped to stare, horrified and thrilled, at a bird's skull nailed above a decomposing bird box high on the trunk of a tree whose leaves whispered in the small breeze. Everywhere was strangeness and wildness and dereliction. And still we went deeper and deeper into the wood.
Why is it so quiet in here?
Lucas whispered.
Isn't it obvious?
Said Clem softly.
This place is haunted.
Yeah, okay, Clem.
Lucas scoffed.
Like there's a kid-eating tramp in the underpass, right?
Don't you feel it, though?
Clem said, serious.
This place has gone bad.
We stopped then at a curve in the dry mud track. All around us, the strangled and strangling trees nudged and battered at each other. We could see a short distance beyond the bend what looked like another clearing.
I think we ought to go back,
I said.
Are you joking?
Said Clem.
This whole thing was your idea.
It's getting late. Our folks will be back from work soon. If my mom finds out that I've been off the estate, she'll blow a gasket and I'll be grounded for a year.
Clem came closer to me until her face was just a few inches from my own. She looked into my eyes for a moment, then a smile curved her lips.
Can't take it, can you, Jamie? You and Lucas are both the same. You talk like big men, but when it comes down to it...
Hey!
Lucas cut in, putting a hand on Clem's shoulder. Clem shook him off.
You go back if you want, but I'm not. I want to see what that is.
I followed Clem's finger and saw what she had seen. In the corner of the clearing, obscured and overgrown, was a low wood and corrugated metal shack.
Fuck me.
Lucas breathed close to my ear.
What sort of person would live out here, in there?
It's abandoned.
I whispered.
It has to be.
Look,
said Clem.
next to the door.
We looked. Next to the rough rectangle of the door was a crude mailbox nailed to the wall at about waist height. A newspaper, unrotted and bright against the corroded tin, poked from its open mouth.
I bet you a tenner that's new,
said Clem, and with that she strode away from us towards the shack in the clearing.
Clementine?
I hissed. The sunlight fell on her like God's own spotlight as she stepped out of the dappling shadows of the wood. I remember hearing the papery sweep of the long grass against her bare legs as she moved away from us. I remember how a small swarm of flying insects followed her progress and how straight and strong her back looked, the keys of her spine moving and visible through her light summer top. I called her name again, but she didn't even look round. Lucas and I watched as she approached the waiting hovel and reached out a hand towards the newspaper rolled tight in the mailbox.
Shit,
I said through gritted teeth, starting to move towards her. I heard Lucas following behind me. Clem, wrenching the newspaper free, held it up and towards us in triumph. She opened her mouth to call something back to us, and at that moment the crude door swung open. I stopped in shock, so suddenly that Lucas slammed into my back and we both crumpled to the ground. Clem's arm, holding the newspaper, dropped. Seemingly in slow motion, her head turned on the hinge of her neck. Lucas and I couldn't see the figure who had opened the door. The gloom from within was too deep for that, but Clem could see. Whatever it was she saw drove the blood from her face and stretched her mouth wide enough to allow passage for the scream that would come. But it didn't come, because at that moment a withered arm shot out of the darkness, yanking her inside by the wrist. I shot up from the ground and, gibbering, ran toward the hovel. I reached the door in the half second before it slammed shut, clutching at Clem's fingers, which were desperately clinging to the frame. I noticed industrial-type letters and numbers printed on the corrugated wall next to the door, and some part of my brain, amid the horror, began to calmly wonder as to their meaning.
Jamie.
I heard Clem's voice begging beyond the door.
Jamie, please, please.
Behind me, Lucas was sobbing, high-pitched and panicked. I pulled as hard as I could, screaming into the dead air, but I only had a grip on 3 of Clem's fingers. Slick with sweat, they slipped from my grasp and disappeared inside. Just before the door slammed shut, I saw a slice of something unspeakable. The elbow of a rough kitchen counter, mildewed and thick with filth. Knives, meat hooks, long bones, gnawed and cracked. I almost passed out then. I would have if Lucas hadn't hit me hard across the face. I realised he'd been shouting in my face, words I hadn't heard. I don't remember running through the woods. I don't remember anything at all until we reached the underpass, and Lucas and I have never spoken of it since. We must have taken the dropped newspaper with us, as I do remember waving a car down with it. I remember how a few of the pages drifted away in the wind, tumbling over themselves in the false wind of the passing traffic. The police never found Clem. They came to my parents' house every day for a week, told me that there was no shack in those woods, told me that the woods were very small, that we could only have been walking in them for 10 minutes or so in any direction before we'd have come to their edge. Wanted to know what had happened to Clem. That's what they kept asking me. She was missing. Where had she gone? When have we last seen her? Why have we made up a story about a cannibalistic tramp? I wasn't allowed to see or speak to Lucas. The local adolescent mental health service was called in. My parents, grey-faced and close to tears, sat on either side of me on the sofa, day after day as the parade passed me by. Only part of me was present to witness it, which was a relief. The police never found a body, and so Clem was put down as a missing person. The police were sure that Lucas and I had been instrumental in her running away from home, but had nothing to charge us with, and so eventually let us be. Clem's parents, equally believing Lucas and I bore some blame, which I guess we did, turned up at my house a couple of times and screamed at my parents, and we moved away not long after. These events happened a very long time ago. You may remember the missing person appeal for Clem in the newspaper. It went nationwide, I think. I'm writing this in my car. I've come back, you see, after all this time. The estate has grown old now, like me. It sags in places. It doesn't stand as straight as it used to. It's whole, but stained and faded. It's become disillusioned. It's seen its acolytes peel away to newer towns and to fashionable city refurbs. The engine's off now, and my breath steams in the cool interior. I picture myself walking across town to the park. I imagine pulling my unwilling bones up that landscaped slope and walking, crab-like and careful, down the other side. I wonder how the underpass will look. I picture the brittle dunes of skeletal leaves that will line its innards. I think of the path through the forest and how I will follow it into the tomb-like dark of the trees. I know that I'll walk for an hour or more and will not come to the wood's outer boundary. Instead, I'll come across a clearing where a shack lurks. Today's newspaper will poke from its mailbox. I came here believing that, having seen it again, I could turn around and leave. I'll be satisfied that I am, and always have been, sane. But I know that I will not, because that contaminated place has been waiting for me. It's hungry again.
Well, great reading.
Really well done.
Oh, that story still gives me chills, and I read it multiple times.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
You have a really lovely way with words. Just like the imagery that you draw with them is just, it like, for me anyways, it really takes me there. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh.
Hi.
Kim was so excited. She was like,
yeah, that was how scared she was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we've got Neen saying, great, fantastic, y'all. And Michelle was, great job, ladies. And I agree. Like, that's me. Yeah, like very immersive imagery is what Neen says.
Thank you.
Yeah. Spooky, well done by Chris. Thanks, guys. We're really glad you appreciated it and liked it. Good job. Yay. Everyone enjoyed it. Yay. It's always good to know that people are enjoying what you're doing. Right. So yeah, if anybody has any questions for any of us, we're going to be here for a little bit longer. You can pop them in the comment section. So this story was from It Calls from the Forest 1. We also have Calls from the Forest 2, It Calls from the Sky out now. And as Holly mentioned earlier, we've got Calls from the Sea coming very soon, which is really exciting. We're excited to see what that one, how that one does, because it's got a fantastic cover, and I think we've all stepped up our stories. I know our submission level was crazy on that one, so I think the stories we picked really kind of set the mood for something spooky and creepy for these stories. We've got a lot of exciting things like that. So for you guys, we know what's going on in 2021. It is Women in Horror Month. So how will we find out? Tell us a little bit how you got into the horror genre to begin with. Kim, let's start with you. So how did you get into horror?
Sort of tripped into it. I thought I was more sci-fi fantasy kind of a girl, and realized that it just didn't have the punch that I wanted. So I was really excited when I learned the term speculative fiction. Yeah. So you can take science fiction and fantasy and throw in horror, and voila. And then I started writing for you. And a couple of times you were like, this is good, but I need more. So I was able to flex those horror muscles and grow a bit in the genre. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, especially in horror, I feel, for me personally anyways, everyone has different taste level. Like I'm not necessarily into extreme horror genres like splatterpunk, but if I am reading something, I do like it to have some moment of just pushing the boundaries. So
I really enjoyed ripping apart a villain at the end that you encouraged me to do.
yeah,
That was fun.
yeah.
Cathartic even.
That guy needed it.
He did. He earned it.
Yeah. How about you, Holly? How did you get into writing horror?
Well, when I was very young, I read horror a lot, and my mom, who has passed away since, she would read horror too, and so we would like switch paperbacks. We would share things. We were always back and forth about the horror novels. This is one thing we could always agree on. So fast forward to when I start writing, I, like Kim, started writing like fantasy mostly, some magical realism stuff, some literary fiction, but my heart was always horror. I that's what I read. It's what I loved. And so I tried my hand at a couple of horror stories that I had kicking around. And, one of those was Forest Man, which is what you accepted for It Calls from the Forest.
Yeah.
And when I wrote that story, it was like writing something I wanted to read instead of writing something that I thought other people would want to read, if that makes sense. Like it kind of did it for me. And because I love the kind of coming of age horror, I like, I child of the South, grew up in forests and running around outside, and that's kind of where my heart's always been. So I think that when I wrote that story, while I was writing it, I was like, this is not good. Like, nobody's going to like this. But then it came out, you guys accepted it, and I started seeing the reviews that would mention that story by name, and I was like, holy crap, people like this. Like, people, and I think at that point I was like, okay, this is where I need to be. Like, this is what I should be writing. It's kind of where my in terms of being a reader, my roots are. It's what I'm familiar with. And since then, almost everything I've written has been horror.
Wow. Well, I'm excited that Forest Man and It Calls from the Forest really kind of sparked this fire in you to, like, kind of, we're going to say, go back home to what you kind of love to read and love to write. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it really did. So I do owe you guys a big debt for that, because before, like I said, I was writing some fantasy. I was just, dabbling, not really sure who I was, as a writer. I was just practicing and kind of playing with it.
Yeah.
But after that success, I was just like, you know what, this is right for me.
Yeah. It's really exciting to see someone find their voice too. Like, it's going to change over time, but like to find just kind of like your writing style that's exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How about you, Melanie? How did you get into writing horror?
I don't think I never set out to write in any genre.
Yeah.
Michelle, I think what happens is I have an idea and I don't like to be constrained by reality.
I get that.
Any sense. So I just will go with what I think will give the greatest truth to the story.
Yeah.
And so, that often is horror. So with this one, although obviously it's only a tiny little nugget of truth within that, to me, the story is more true than the reality, because it like epitomizes the strange atmosphere and the fear that we felt at the time, if you know what I mean. Which, if I'd just written an account of what happened, we found a strange house, there was a newspaper, we were a bit scared, we went home, that wouldn't sum up what was going on in my head and how it stuck with me. So sort of taking it beyond into sort of the horrific place, to me, is being true to the experience somehow. So this is often how I end up. I sort of start with an idea, and then a genre happens to me rather than me happening to a genre, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. And it's funny because my next question was going to be your story for everybody is, where do you find your inspiration? Is it from real life? And it seems like for you, at least for this story, it was inspired by real life events. Are all your stories kind of like that? Do they have nuggets of
life? I would say so. Often it's very tiny, or it will start out as a sort of a weird what if idea.
Yeah.
You know, so, well, this happened. What if that and that and that then happened afterwards? Where would that take it? So yeah, there's always tiny little grains of truth. So I've done a few stories about pickpockets. It's sort of speculative fiction that have been published in various places. And that all came about from a trip we did to London and sort of thinking, oh, what if there was a pickpocket in that sort of scenario and someone picked the wrong pocket and got this terrible surprise? And it sort of went on from there.
I like that idea.
And then I liked that so much. I then went on to sort of write a trilogy of stories about that. And so a lot of ideas will just start with a little grain and think, where could that go if reality isn't constraining me?
Yeah, I love that idea.
Thanks,
well,
Michelle.
I love that because I think a lot of us write like that as well. So but I need to read these pickpocket stories.
Oh,
now.
Bless you. I'll send them to you, Michelle.
Kim, how about you? Do you write from, like, where do you find your inspiration?
I wish I knew. I would throw those doors open. Oddly enough, sometimes it's a thought or a line will pop into my head when I'm falling asleep. What I have discovered is that when I start to get an idea and I get stuck on something, I go take a shower. And I've spent, I can't tell you how many times at my computer with a towel on my head, wrapped in a towel, typing frantically so I don't forget. But it's from various things. I'm a gamer. My wife is a bladesmith. So all of these little pieces that pull in. And I like to put a hook on things. I like to twist them up. So the inspiration that comes from a story may not be in the story at all.
Oh, really? But it just sparked the idea.
Yep.
Well, that's kind of cool. How about you, Holly? How do you find inspiration for your stories?
Well, sometimes it comes from like an image or like Kim had mentioned, like a line or something. More often than not, I get a character first, like a person who I want to write about. Like with Forest Man, it was the character Nate. With Heaven's Lake, it was actually the junkyard man, and I'm not going to say more than that so as not to spoil anything with the story. But for each character, I kind of start building this person in my head, and usually it has roots in someone that I knew or have known, or maybe someone I met that I was very intrigued by and thought, what do I think this person is like? And it doesn't necessarily have to be who they are specifically, but I take a couple of characteristics from people that I enjoy, or if not real people, then maybe characters that I've read about or seen in a movie or a television series or something.
Yeah.
And I find these people and I think, I want to get to know these people and I want to put them in a situation, where I can learn more about them. And so that more often than not is where I start with, I think with settings and plot. I'm really into imagery. I've been told I'm a very visual kind of descriptive writer. I don't know necessarily what that means, but that's what people have told me. But I think that what I think where it comes from is that, I will look at pictures when I write of like whether it's something to inspire me or something like that. And I try to describe as much as I can of like the people or the places and things like that, so that as you read it, you kind of can see it as if it were a movie in your head. So I do, I guess, take a lot of inspiration from things like film and things like, pictures, images, stuff like that.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Now, for me, I'm one of those writers where, like, my favorite place when I am writing to write is a dark room when everybody is asleep at like 2:00 in the morning and not a sound near me, because I get distracted so easily. So for you guys, what's your perfect writing scenario? Like, is it on the couch? Are you watching TV? Or do you have to be like, are you on your car, on your phone? Like, where are you most happiest writing? I should have. Holly, let's do you at the start.
Well, for me, before COVID hit, because I live in not that far from New York City, so we got hit really hard, really fast.
Oh, yeah.
everything shut down. But prior to that, my husband and I, he writes as well, we would go to a coffee shop and we would sit and we would order coffee. That way, we're out of the house. We have dogs, we have kids, teenagers, one of whom is disabled. And, the distractions at home don't really allow for concentration on the project, right? So getting out of the house and removing ourselves from the, the immediate busyness of life was great. But then COVID came and shut everything down. So this summer we purchased like an outdoor tent with like the mesh sides, and it's like really nice. It's kind of a gazebo type thing, and we put that up on our patio out back so that we had our own private outdoor space. So we did that over the summer until winter and snow and such. So we've taken it down. So it's actually been a lot harder to write since we've taken it down, because we can't go to the coffee shop because everything's still kind of closed here, and you can't go outside because it's cold. So writing slowed since then. But my perfect environment is that it's either in my tent in my backyard, or it's at a coffee shop where distractions from children and dogs and things are at a minimum.
No, I hear you. How about you, Melanie?
When I'm first drafting, what I call a dirty draft, where I'm not worried about grammar or anything.
I like that term.
Dirty draft. Yeah, I quite like to do it where there's quite a lot of noise, because then there's no pressure. I'm not writing something, I'm playing. So I quite like there to be a lot of stuff going around. Yeah. And then once I've got that, some sort of outline, when I'm doing serious writing, then I like to be quiet or with just music. So there's two stage affair, Michelle.
Can you do music with lyrics, or are you just really?
Yeah.
I'm so surprised when people can write with distractions, because I'm just like, I'm like a dog that's like, ooh.
Yeah, music I can do. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'll just end up singing with the song.
I think I do. I think sometimes when you read back, you think, oh, there's a few like words in there that shouldn't be in there, and I think
you're like, oh,
yeah, that's a Bon Jovi lyric.
I love that. How about Kim? What's your perfect writing scenario?
I think I share a lot of processes with Holly. I prefer to go to coffee shop. I used to work a 3-minute walk from the library. So at lunch, I would walk over to the library, spend my lunch hour, and then walk back to work. Can't do that now. So what you see out here as much as I can. The distractions of people inside, I have several roommates and a wife. So the distractions of people inside are too much. But I actually like to listen to movies I've seen 100 times or TV shows I've watched 100 times, something familiar in the background. There's noise. It's not music, so I'm not singing along with it, but I find silence to be incredibly distracting.
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah,
it's sort of chaos.
Yeah. It's interesting how everyone kind of like works completely different sometimes, right? Like all of our creative processes are so different.
It's strange to me that you can't. Oh, sorry.
I just said, imagine all of us in a hotel room trying to be productive.
I was just saying, it's strange to me, Michelle, that you can't write with like music, because one of the things that I do often is when I'm setting to write a story and I kind of know what the tone of the story is going to be, I'll often go to YouTube and make like a playlist of songs that kind of fit that mood. And then I'll let that play. And sometimes there's songs with lyrics, sometimes they're not. But I kind of let the music play in the background so that it keeps, I find my tone consistent. Like I don't fall out of it, because, I don't write fast. I write very slow. So if I sit down one night, I might write 1,000 words if I'm lucky, if I'm having a good day. And so because I have to like not write and then write and then not write and then write, I find that when I put the playlists on, it helps me maintain the tone, even though I stop writing and then come back and write. I don't have to get my head right back in the headspace. It's just there when I put the playlist on. So that's interesting that you don't like the music. That's definitely different.
I'm so distracted. like I have tried music before. Like sometimes I can't even have music on when I'm formatting books. Like it has nothing to do with writing at all. It's just formatting. But like I'm just one of those people where I need to be completely focused. And that's just
Michelle, have you always been like this, or has it been since you've had a toddler in your life that you have to
no, my entire life. Actually, well, I didn't write that much before I had a toddler in my life. So I don't know. I did try to write a book, but I don't know if I had music. I can't remember because that was years ago. So I can't remember if I listened to music or not. But I got distracted enough that I never finished it. So maybe I listened to music too much. Maybe. Who knows? Never got finished. Although I have files of all my character ideas still in my filing cabinet. I'm getting back to it. It's going to be an epic dark fantasy with a lot of killing. I'm very excited.
Wow. I want to read it.
So is it a novel or is it a series?
In my head, it was a series. It was like a 3 to 4 series book. But okay. We'll see what ends up happening with it. Like, again, I think I've got, like I've started 2 or 3 books over the last decade. And right. I haven't gotten past like chapter 3 or 4 on any of them. Because I distract myself too much. So, but now that I'm actually in the writing game and publishing, maybe I'll finally find like the courage to sit down and actually finish something that's more than a couple thousand words, right? So, but thanks so much for joining us and like sharing this beautiful story with us and reading. It was great to see you all again, and we'll see some of you for the first time. Melanie, it was great to finally meet you.
You too.
It was a wonderful story, Melanie.
Oh, thank you, Holly, and thanks everyone for doing the part so brilliantly. I feel really honoured. You guys read it all so lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was great. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. This is Eerie River, Women in Horror Month. Again, we're celebrating everything with women in horror. So if you haven't been able to watch our previous shows, you can find them on YouTube, and we've got some on Facebook as well. We also have been highlighting women on our blog. So if you go to www.eerriverpublishing.com, hit the blog, and you can go through, I think we've got almost 10 women we've highlighted, plus a lot of their stories as well. So you can read some free fiction on that. And we have, if you haven't subscribed already to our YouTube channel, subscribe now and go on to our contest posts on either Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, because we're doing a contest. That's what the word is. It's an Amazon gift card contest. So if you subscribe and you tag a friend, you get entered for an Amazon gift card. So now that I've done the spiel, thank you again, everyone, for coming. Yes.
Don't you also have a Patreon and an Indiegogo?
Oh, yes, we have. Well, yeah. And yeah, we've got a lot of stuff going on. We've got a Patreon if anyone wants to support us. We've got monthly stories that go on there every month. And then for authors, it also allows you to submit to our big calls, like it calls from the doors is the next one, that they could submit starting February for that. You can submit a month early, and then you get free ebooks and paperbacks and all that other fun stuff. And then we also have our Indiegogo campaign right now. If you are interested in supporting, you can get, so if you're planning on buying books and ebooks and stickers and things like that, anyways, this is just our way of fundraising at this moment, just to cover some and hopefully to raise our rates for authors, because we'd like to be able to pay per word. So if you'd like to support, there is our Indiegogo campaign information. You can go on there to see what we've got. We'll have everything in the comments below as well. But yeah. Oh,
Michelle, you might want to share a link for the for the swag. I was going to say.
I'm like, we have everything. We're pitching everything now. We've got hats and mugs and T-shirts and sweaters, stickers. I'm in the process, actually, if you'd like to. I'm in the process of creating a sticker. my daughter was coloring in one of my prototypes. It's not completely finished, but I do it all by hand, and then I take a picture of it, and then I digitally just kind of edit it. So that's the start of our next sticker. And it's also going to be going on a coffee mug, and I believe it's going to say "I choo choo Cthulhu you," because it's anyways. So you guys have a great day. Thank you so much for participating and just being here. Yeah, and thank you everybody for hanging out with us. It's been great, and we hope to see you soon, because we've got another live reading next week with our authors from with Blood and Ash and with Bone and Iron. So it's our dark fantasy that's coming next week, where we're gonna do little readings of all of our stories. So it should be fun. Sweet. Yeah, and some giveaways. So see you next week. And thank you again, everybody. I'll see you soon. I'm just going to put on our little, it's going to get loud. Bye.